Okay, the time is now 7 o'clock. I'd like to call this session of the Bridgewater Town Council meeting to order. Can you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? All right, thank you, everybody. So just to announce for those at home, Town Council meeting is being streamed live via YouTube. Please go to the Town of Bridgewater Facebook page for the link to that. I do want to start off with some condolences of some veterans that have passed here in town. The first is Richard Donahue, a U.S. Army veteran and veteran of the Vietnam War. He passed away on December 14th. Robert Desrio, U.S. Air Force veteran and of the Vietnam era. He passed away on December 20th. Charles Kelly, veteran of the U.S. Navy during the Vietnam era, passed away on December 25th. Donald Sweeney served in the U.S. Navy, passed away on January 3rd of this new year. Harold Madan, U.S. Army veteran and veteran of the Korean War, passed away on January 9th of this new year. And lastly, Walter Hand, U.S. Air Force veteran of the Korean War era. He passed away on January 11th of this year. Can I please have a moment of silence for those deceased veterans and their family members, please? Thank you very much. Let's see. Moving on to approval of minutes from our previous meeting. We have the meeting minutes for January 7th, 2025. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Mr. Chase, seconded by Mr. Lindy. Any discussion on those notes? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. I do have a couple announcements I'd like to make from the president's seat here. A friendly reminder to the citizens of Bridgewater to complete their census ASAP, so that an accurate street list for 2025 can be published. Residents who have misplaced their census or did not receive it because of a recent move, please contact the town clerk's office to update their census record. This is very important for the street listings for 2025. So if you haven't done it yet, please do so as soon as possible. Also coming from the town clerk's office, dog licenses are due for 2025. Please license your dog by February 28th to avoid a late fee. Late fees will begin March 1st. Dog owners, please make sure a recent rabies certificate is on file with the town clerk's office. They do receive them from local vets, but if you're unsure, contact the office to confirm. So those are the two main announcements that I had to read off tonight. We do not have any proclamations, so I will move to Citizens Open Forum. And as usual, due to mass open meeting law requirements, discussions will not take place during the public comment period. If appropriate, responses to questions and concerns will be given by the town manager at a future town council meeting. If you'd like to come up and speak, please state your name and address for the record and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. If someone would like to come up and speak, I would love to have you come up now. Janet, come on up.
Janet Hanson, 665 Pleasant Street. Thank you. I wasn't at the last meeting, so I don't know. Did you mention Stanley Kravitz at the last meeting? Okay, I just didn't want to forget him. I don't have much to talk about, and I'm sure everybody's yay. But I'm going to talk about the BSU presentation at BSU last Thursday about the proposed possible changes for downtown. And there was a lot to absorb for people, but I found it disappointing that the one thing that they concentrated on was what they call the roundabout. They had two options. They had 5 things. They disregarded everything, and they brought it down to 2. They touched very lightly on the other one option that didn't have the roundabout, but they concentrated solely on that roundabout. And I think, to be fair, they should have done it evenly on so that people could actually see what the true differences are between them, other than the obvious thing that there's a roundabout. I personally don't think that roundabout would work. I have talked to a lot of other people that don't think that's going to work. And I know it's not a final deal. They've got a lot to consider, and hopefully they listen to everybody on those questions. Everybody had a lot of good questions about parking. They thought we had a lot of optional parking for people. We don't. We have one public parking behind Periwinkles. I'll use Periwinkles because that's what I go to. And the street parking. The other parking is all businesses. They would have to approve. The CVS doesn't allow anybody to park there unless they're CVS. I don't know about the Walgreens parking area, but we don't have as much parking space in the center of town as they thought. They didn't realize a lot of things in their planning, and they couldn't answer the question about trucks going through there adequately. They seemed confused, not prepared, and they say they don't design it for trucks, they design it for other traffic. So I really hope that a lot more work goes in. It's kind of like they need to go back to the drawing board, and but they should have discussed the other plan too, not just the roundabout. And I thought it was one-sided, totally one-sided. And I don't, as far as them saying that 82% of people that were there voted for the roundabout, I have kind of a feeling people didn't really understand what, because it was kind of quick. Everybody click, 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 you know, and then they came up with 82%. And I question who else was voting. Is it just all the town people, or was other people voting? But it's not a true representation of the town by that percentage. So I just hope we kind of go back to the drawing board on this. That's not totally what we, but concentrate on the other plans, not just the roundabout. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Right on time. Anybody else that come up and speak, please?
Hi, Laureen Powers, 41 Sunrise Drive. I know the flagpole issue is not on the agenda, and I know you can't answer a question, but I'm a little bit confused actually in terms of who, whether it's through the town manager's department or the town council, as far as procurement and looking into cost and so forth. So maybe if at the next meeting you could just clarify that a little bit, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine. Anybody else like to speak? Okay, thanks, John. All right, seeing nothing else, I will move on. We do not have any appointments this evening. And hearings, we do have a couple of them this evening. First one is the proposed ordinance DFY 25-006, Bridgewater Town Charter Amendment for Gender-Neutral Language. This was advertised in the Enterprise in 1-6. Rules of Procedure voted 3-0 to recommend at the 11/13 meeting. So I will open up the public hearing now at 7:09. Mr. Murphy, you are the sponsor of this. Do you want to just start off at least with a brief overview again of this ordinance?
Yeah, I believe there were 3 sections within the town charter that referenced the gender language he when speaking about the town manager or other positions within town employment. And so that's just to change that language to gender neutral, referring to there and them, should there be, to address that gender neutral language. Sorry. That's it.
Okay, very good. Are there any general questions from the public around about this item? Please, if you want to come up and ask a question, please come up to the podium. Again, name and address for the record.
Janet Hanson, 665 Pleasant Street. It's not really a question, or maybe it is, but I was on the Charter Review Committee 5 years ago, come the summer. We went through all that line by changing things from, you know, making it so it wasn't he or she. We did it, and it's in our presentation. So I'm just, is this a continuation of what we had put in, or is this something brand new? But we did we did go through that whole thing when we did the charter review. I just want to mention that, okay?
I'll defer to Council Murphy or Council Chase.
I think that what was presented by the Charter Review Committee were recommendations, and we are enacting this now based upon that recommendation.
Yes. Okay, very good. Any other questions from the public? Seeing nothing further, any public speaking in favor? And any public speaking in opposition? All right, any questions from any town councilors on this item?
May I make
Miss-
a comment, Mr. President?
Certainly, Ms. Ellenberg.
As of today, the federal government has said that there are two sexes, he and she, and I really think that we shouldn't go into this gender-neutral language. We should stay current with what is developing in the country. And so my comment is I will be voting no on this. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Ellenberg. Any other questions from any councilors? Ms. McGrath.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, does this cost us when we send something to the state to change?
Cost factor, I'm not sure of. Attorney Rollins, do you have a question or answer to that?
It doesn't cost us any money to have the legislature consider it and vote on it. The only point where it costs money technically is all of these charter changes often come back and are put to a town-wide vote. So if there isn't anything else to vote on that particular election cycle, I guess conceivably it would cost money, but if there were already things to vote on, then not really.
Okay, thank you. And the other thing, who recommended it?
Who recommended these changes?
Yeah.
This was recommended by the Charter Review Committee. I met with a member of the Charter Review Committee from the previous committee that was formed.
Okay, so there's one other thing. It's right in here. You have chairman. Should you change that to chairperson? Should we go through it and make sure that is that?
Where are you seeing this, Councilor
It
McGrath?
says Article 4, financial management. It's right on the bottom. Because you have his changed to theirs. And if you continue, right before that, it says school committee chairman. So should you go through it and see if
School
there's,
committee.
do chairpersons?
Oh, chairman or his designee. Okay, their designee. Mr.
Thank you,
James.
Mr. President. I think the answer to that is that elsewhere throughout the charter, I'm reasonably confident that the word chairman is utilized. And so for the purposes of consistency, we should not change it here. And by the way, these are changes that have already been discussed and voted on in committee and with a recommendation for approval tonight. So I wouldn't necessarily at this point think it necessary or appropriate for us to consider further changes that would be inconsistent with existing language in the charter as it stands.
Okay, Mr. Chase? Anything else, Ms. McGrath? Oh, hold on a second. Are you all set, Ms. McGrath, on your question? Mr. Loretti?
Yeah, as I understand, this is obviously to remove some gendered language from the charter, and I did read this, and I did go through it. I noticed chairman, and it's mentioned at least a dozen times in the charter. Obviously, this is a long process. We have to discuss it here. We have to send it to state legislature, and then we have to vote on it. It's a lot of resources, so I would hate for this to go to the voters, us vote on it, and then have to go and change it again. So I would suggest that we either discuss it here or table it and bring it up again, because if we're going to do it, we might as well do it right as it was intended, because chairman or committee man, there's a lot of it in the charter, and something that I noticed. So I don't want to waste resources doing this and then having to redo it.
Mr. Lindy?
Through you to the town council. Obviously, we can go through the charter. That may have been a recommendation too, with that language, chairman, chairperson. So maybe we can go back and look at it and then bring that back forward to this committee, send it to Rules and Procedures, and bring it back to the council. Before it all goes out to the state.
You certainly can make a motion to send back to committee, and then you would have to have committee weigh in, and then you would have to make a motion to amend. And then it would have to be amended to reflect whatever else you want amended, and then you would start the process kind of from there. But, yeah, I mean, certainly you can vote it back to committee, but committee can't do the amendment.
Right.
And it sounds to me like the amendment would reflect several other areas of the charter relative to those changes. So that's really up to you all, right? The process is in your hands as it relates to that. I can tell you the right procedure to get there if that's what you all vote. But you can always send it back to committee if that's what the will of the body politic is.
Or we could do this portion.
Or you can
and
do
then
this portion and
another
absolutely,
amendment at
of course, of course.
Okay. So, going back to Mr. Laurie, are you making any motion at this point in time?
I will make a motion to refer back to committee.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
And second by Ms. Ellenberg. Any further discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of sending it back to committee signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed?
Aye.
Nay? So we had, can I get a roll call on that, because that seemed close?
He's not here. Mr. Loretti?
Yes.
Ms. Ellenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
No.
Dr. Perry?
No?
Mr. Lindy?
No.
Mr. Chase?
No.
Ms. Striggles?
Yes.
And Ms. McGrath?
Yes.
So it's 1, 2, 3,
it's
4.
4 to
It's
4
4 to
again.
4.
44.
Fails.
It fails.
Tie fails.
Okay, so we'll not send to committee. Any further questions from any counselors on this before moving forward? Ms. Striggles?
I would just like to point out that there is a difference between someone's sex and someone's gender. One is how they were biologically born, and the other is based on their cultural preferences and their social identity. So I really just want to make that very clear that, albeit the federal government can do whatever they want, but as the town of Bridgewater, we are an inclusive community, and we should be as such. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Striggles. Any other comments? All right, so at this point, I will close the public hearing at this point in time, which is 7:18, and then I will entertain a motion to approve the ordinance.
Motion to approve?
Mr. Chase, second by Mr. Lindy. Any further discussion? Again, probably to be safe, I'll go with a roll call vote on this item.
Ms. McGrath?
What am I voting? Yes to go what? To approve it?
Yes to
To
approve the
the
ordinance.
order as written.
Yes.
Ms. Striggles?
Yes.
Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Lindy?
Yes.
Dr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Ellenberg?
No.
Mr. Loretti?
No.
That's 6 in favor, 2 opposed. Right?
Motion carries. Thank you. Next, under hearings, we have ordinance DFY 25-009, Veterans Volunteer Services Program Work-Off. I will open the hearing here now at 7:19. And this was introduced by myself, but again, this is to update our Veterans Volunteer Services Program language to be more in line with state rules, and allows us to continue the volunteer labor of the town of Bridgewater while providing reduction in veterans tax bill. I will ask if there's any general questions from the public in regards to this ordinance. Seeing none, anyone speaking in favor of this ordinance? Or anyone speaking in opposition? Is there any questions from the town councilors on this particular item?
Not a question, but I strongly support this.
Thank you, Mr. Lindy. Any other councilor comments? Seeing none, I will close the hearing. That was a quick hearing. 7:20. And I will entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Mr. Lindy, second by Ms. Striggles. Any further discussion on the item? Seeing none, All those in favor of the passing of this ordinance, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Unanimously, the motion carries. Thank you very much. That concludes hearings for this evening. We have one license transaction to undertake, petition P-2025-017, the granting of an annual entertainment license for Fire for Effect Foundation. Fortunately, we don't have Councilor McKinnon here to discuss, because I know he's closely associated with that. But again, this looks like for a, what's the dates of this one here?
Mr. President, I helped him a little bit with this.
Okay, do you have any description you want to offer?
Yes, Al, he has a full schedule of events, and rather than getting one for each one, he requested an annual license,
Oh,
so he gets it all at once.
certainly. Please come on up.
Al Lacerda, Laurel Street. Yeah, I'm here for the seasonal entertainment license. Over the last 3 years, we've worked pretty hard on that area of Bridgewater. Our goals and intentions for that are to utilize that space to run not-for-profit events and give kind of Bridgewater some kind of identity. We started the process of that by moving forward to First Responder Day, to which the council gracefully passed as a law. And that has had a great effect on the town and the surrounding towns who look at Bridgewater as kind of a model for how we treat the people that work within our community. And we're still growing that. It's already on the schedule. This will be year 3. We will be moving forward with many more events down there. We plan on expanding that to include other not-for-profits within the town and including them into the utilization of the space to be able to use it to benefit themselves and market themselves. And we're also planning to bring back farmers market to Bridgewater on a semi-consistent basis, all with the goal to kind of tie the community together, give people in the town things to do rather than have to go to other places to do that, and also benefit veterans and first responders at the same time. So we wanted to make it a little bit easier to utilize that space and move forward with our goals. So we put forward that license so that we didn't have to continually come back over and over again to pull single-day licenses for that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lacerda. Appreciate the information.
Thank you.
And just looking through the application, both all police, fire, and building departments have no problem with the issuances of this license. So with that, do I hear a motion for approval?
Motion?
Good, Mr. Ellenberg, second by Ms. McGrath. Any further discussion on this petition? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, Mr. Lacerda. Excellent. Moving right along. We do not have any presentations specifically this evening, but we do have a town manager's report coming up. So I'll turn that over to our town manager.
I'd like to start by having Mr. Rulli give you the presentation on the fire station update.
Sounds wonderful. Mr. Ruling.
It's up, it's on.
I started my day with some of you, and I'll end my day with some of you. It really doesn't get any better than that.
Full day, full day.
So we've added some more content to the monthly report at the encouragement of Mr. Murphy. I think the report, for the most part, speaks for itself. I will highlight that design. There are no design milestones. The project is 100% complete in terms of design. That's not to suggest as we get into some of the final construction, there may be some tweaks, but those would appear as change orders. Same thing with permitting. That is completed 100%. The next steps are laid out, and we've given you the project progress photos in the report. I do want to just touch on the 3-week look ahead. I think there was some comments at the last meeting that the numbers didn't make sense. I've tried to give some clarification. So we have duration, how long the task should take, the proposed or suggested time that we think that project or that task is going to start, and then the finish date. So as an example, if the duration is 13 days and we start on December 10th, that does not mean we're going to be done on December 23rd, because we have to take into consideration weekends, weather. If we're pouring concrete, we need to let the concrete set up. And if we're doing spraying, it has to be a certain temperature. We've been fortunate up until this week that we haven't had any significant delays. We still are about 6 weeks ahead of schedule. So I'm sure there was some interruptions the last 2 days because of the weather, but that's not to say we can't overcome those. So that is the 3-week look ahead. It is something that we discuss as a team every Monday afternoon and every Wednesday. I've also included the change order log. Just because it's on the change order log doesn't mean that it's an approved change order. We've rejected change orders. I will point out that the two most significant change order items, totaling over $166,000, that was because we went to contract before we had the project through the permitting process and the approval process. So there was site modifications that had to be made, comments from the Concom, but I think most of the changes that you're seeing are pretty minor. These are either coming suggestions from the fire department themselves, the architect as we get in the project. This is not uncommon. We're well within the contingency that the project has. What's not reflected on here as an example is for police details, we got a credit back because we didn't bill that through the contractor. We bill that directly through the town. But it is something that I hate change orders, so it's something that I spent a lot of time looking at. The other thing that, Mr. Murphy had asked is in terms of equipment. We are fortunate that we bought out most of the material for this project early on. Difficult to quantify what the cost savings would be because that's a bit of a moving target now. We could factor in what inflation is, but since November of last year, just the suggestion that there are tariffs have moved the prices for many materials anywhere from 7 to 15%. I think the good news is we've bought out the project. We have most of it on site. What we still need to order would not be a supply chain issue and should not be, and not coming from outside of the country, so shouldn't necessarily be impacted. And then the last piece is giving you a snapshot of where we are with respect to budget. Just having a quick conversation with Ms. Robinson. We will add a couple more lines to this moving forward, but we have a total project budget of $25.9 million. To date, we have expended $7.3 million. So we're well within the project budget. We're ahead of schedule, and we're well below what our contingency amount is. But happy to answer any questions.
Thank you,
If
Mr.
anybody's
Rubin.
been by there, you can see there's significant progress on a daily basis.
You bet. Thank you, Mr. Rulli. Any comments from any councilors? Mr. Murphy?
Just two quick questions. First, thank you for putting this together. I think it's an excellent document. I think I understand that it wasn't included in this week's agenda for the council meeting, but it will be in the minutes following the meeting. So would advise folks to take a look because I think there's a lot of great information here. So thank you to all of you who took time to put this together. My first question would be, does our current plan still include updates to Station 2 as originally planned?
There is a set aside, I think, of $2 million in the budget for Station 2. Quite honestly, I need to get out there with the chief and do an assessment of what we think that total expenditure are. I know there's issues with the door, there's issues with the parking lot. I wanted to get a little more comfortable and a little further into this project before we felt comfortable enough that we could access that $2 million that's set aside, but that is not part of the total budget number that I gave you. That's pulled out of this.
Okay. And then my next question is, and I think I already know the answer to this, but I think it's important for everybody here. The current budget does not include any plans for what currently is the headquarters for the fire department. So that building will remain vacant and intact because that was not planned for when we originally put this together, which I know, Mr. Rulli, you weren't a part of. And
Yeah,
Mr.
I mean,
Robinson,
I
you weren't
think,
a part of.
but fair question. I mean, there is nothing in this budget for that. Whether this year or next year, we're going to have some kind of line number in there for the demolition and the environmental remediation of that site, but that is not included in this project budget.
Excellent. And I only ask because I know it's important to you,
Yep.
as we talk about downtown revitalization, that the town has 2 vacant buildings in downtown that are just sitting there. So I think it's important, and I appreciate you adding that about the future for what that building looks like. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councilors? Mr. like that. Councilor, go ahead. It's been a long day.
Yeah, it has been a long day. So first of all, I just want to thank Mr. Murphy for asking for the report, and I want to thank Mr. Rulli for giving us all the information. It's good. Just one favor, please. I can't read microprint, and if there's any way to add a page or make it bigger.
You're talking about the change
Yeah,
order
the
log?
change order log.
We can
and-
make, certainly we
just-
can,
Yeah, old eyes.
yeah, I mean,
Magnifying glass doesn't work.
I was
either.
just sitting here trying to do that myself, so point
Thank you.
taken.
Thank you for
Thank
the
you,
information.
Councilor Lindy.
Yeah. There we go.
It clicked. It finally came through. Any other councilors? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll turn it over to the town manager for the rest of the report.
So we wanted to cover 2 other topics tonight. First is the library feasibility study. A few months ago, we put out an RFP to seek firms to do that evaluation of the building. We received 6 responses. We put a team together of the town engineer, library director, facilities director, and public works director to review those. They did. They came back with a recommendation to interview 2 of them in person and follow up with reference checks. Based upon that, we unanimously selected a company called DRA, an architectural firm, to do the work. They have a lot of experience specifically in libraries, and a team that they've had with engineers, outside engineers that they work with over, I think, the last 20 or 30 years, a strong team to come in and do this assessment. So we're moving forward to contract with them. Another positive outcome to this process was that they were the team we selected unanimously. They're also the least expensive team. Doesn't always work out that way, so we're happy about that. So we are working through the contract issues. I expect we're going to have that resolved this week, and they will be able to get to work. They had estimated for us they can do the work in approximately 2.5 months. We've told them it's okay if it needs to take a little longer to be thorough about that. And we've asked the finance director to include in the capital budget request $27,000, which was their bid price, and also asked her to include a couple thousand extra dollars just because if they recommend any type of destructive testing, that they really want to get just a closer look at a particular aspect of the building before they give us their final recommendations, we want to be able to give them the green light to do that. For example, they're going to go up on the roof, and they're going to fly a drone over the roof, both ways to try and get a sense of the roof. But if they say to us, really, if we could do a core sample of the roof, we just have a better understanding of its status, we want to be able to make an investment in that, possibly, or in some other aspect of the building, so that the report can be thorough and give us a good roadmap for where we go next. So it's about to come together.
All right. Any questions from councilors on that particular item? Mr. Lindy?
Just want to thank you for that good information. DRA is a phenomenal firm. I'm glad they were picked. Just a quick question. Is there anything in the interim at some point that can be done with the appearance of the front columns? I know they'll figure out there's big holes in it, and I know it's not structural, but it just looks so awful. And now that the lights are off, I mean, God, it'd be nice if we could put, I know it's not going to last, but paper mache. It just looks so horrendous. Because if you take any pictures of that or you look at it, and it's a historic old building. I know it's not structural, but if we can push them to do anything.
I'll check with our facilities director and see what he has to say.
Okay, thank you.
Any other councilor questions on that? Ms. Ellenberg?
Yes, for the townspeople listening, could you explain what are the changes in this library feasibility study? What work will be done?
we're asking them to do an evaluation of all of the building itself and its systems, so we can understand what needs to be updated, replaced. They will, they're not necessarily there to look at how the library programs are run, though they may, because of their depth of knowledge, being an outside observer, maybe point out some suggestions to the library director and the trustees, but it's mainly to look at the windows, the mechanical systems, the roof, the columns, the doors, to say, okay, your library has these group of needs. This is what I recommend needs to be addressed. And the town wants to take that report, can then decide, well, okay, we're going to appropriate some additional funds to design all those repairs or replacements, while at the same time looking for funding sources such as the state library building construction grants. They do offer them for repairs and renovation, so that may be an avenue to go down. But this is the first step to figuring out the roadmap.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, any other council questions? Oh,
Just a quick question.
go ahead.
Town Manager Robinson, can I just ask where the 27,000 comes from in our current budget?
It's going to be in the capital plan that we're bringing forward to you in the next month.
So it'll actually be on the FY,
Yes,
well, the next
25,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, great. I guess we'll move on to the next item, please.
So the next item is the Senior Day Program. Just to give everyone some context, the town applied for a grant about a year ago to the state state wanted to increase programming that was available for seniors. And so they were challenging communities to come up with both in-person, remote, and hybrid programming that could benefit seniors. And so Bridgewater put together a grant application to offer a dementia program, or programming for seniors with dementia that could be, again, in person. People could participate from home, and then it could be also streamed for people to watch later. That grant was awarded to both Bridgewater and Halifax together, with the goal being that programming would be offered in both locations. So that was underway, and that was very specifically a one-year program that would end on March 31st of 2025 for everyone who received the grant. We have launched that program. We have been able to do it very successfully in person in Bridgewater. We've had some challenges in Halifax for technical reasons. It hasn't worked out as well. But nevertheless, it is supposed to end at the end of March. I did speak with the COA director, Ms. Williams. She is actively looking for grant opportunities, state or federal or private, to try to continue the program, because they do see a real need that hasn't been met for people who, have challenges such as this, being able to participate in more programs that will help them in many ways than have been offered in the past. As I sit here today, I can't promise you that we will achieve a grant to pay for it, and I think it would be difficult to try to put it into the FY26 budget with what I know today about the budget scenarios.
Any questions to the town manager on that item? Mr.
Quick, do we know what the cost would be needed to fund if we were to continue?
Off the top of my head, it's generally going to be the staffing, paying the director. There's an activities assistant in each location. Off the top of my head, I can't give you a number. As well as any programming cost to bring in people to run programs, an expert in a particular topic, that sort of thing. I can get an estimate from her.
Okay. Thanks.
Sure. Any other comments, questions? I'll just add, since obviously you mentioned that the partnership with Halifax didn't go well, are we looking to continue this solo just for Bridgewater?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. And is there going to be the need to have two towns in the grant application process?
Nope, we can go on
Single
our
town
own.
can do it? Okay.
We were hoping that the state would find a way to continue the program, especially for ones that met all the metrics that they asked us to achieve, which we have. They're very happy with what we have achieved, but they say that there is no more funding.
Understand. Okay, thank you. All right. Any other requests for the town manager for the next meeting? Mr. Murphy?
I have two requests to ask of you. A lot of folks have been asking about paving around town and what's happening, especially on Flag Street as the work is being done there. Could we have an update on town paving, what the plan is? And I'm assuming it'll be addressed in the upcoming budget, but I think just almost a progress report would be great to see where we're at with that. And then I would ask for the same on our water and sewer, just an update there on what that looks like in the near future for upgrades. I know we had talked about the Vernon Street wells and the upgrades that were happening there. So if we could just have a progress report on those as well too, that would be great.
If I could just ask a question, I was speaking with the Public Works Director today. Would you be amenable to doing that about the same time we introduce the capital budget? So we're talking about all these capital items at the same time?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I would only ask if you could simplify those two things, maybe outside of the budget itself, just for folks to digest and understand, especially as it pertains to time frame and how long these projects are going to take. I think would be really helpful.
I understand.
Thank you.
Any other requests? Seeing none, we're moving on. We do not have any discussion items this evening. Committee reports. Do I have any committee reports? Mr. Chase.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just very briefly, the Rules and Procedures Committee did meet last week to consider two items of legislation that have been referred to us. Just very briefly, I'll give you a recap. The committee considered the pending proposed amendment to the town flag raising ordinance that had been brought forward by Councilor Lindy and Councilor McGrath. Councilor McGrath was in attendance virtually at the meeting. After discussion, we did vote 3-0 to continue the matter to a future meeting, which is the same action we took in December, and for the same reason, simply so that when we consider the matter, we're actually able to have a certain degree of clarity as to what might be happening with respect to flagpoles, the matter that had been requested that the town manager conduct a study as to. So that vote was taken and passed. And the other matter before us last week was the proposed amendment to charter amendment or ordinance to the voting hours for local elections in the town that have been brought forward with the support of our town clerk. The committee did vote 3-0 in favor of a fairly significantly amended version of that proposed legislation. And I suspect that this will be brought forward before the full council at our next session.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chase. Any other committee reports?
Just a
Mr.
quick
Murphy.
reminder that tomorrow evening we have our community forum for the ad hoc search group for the next town manager. The forum will be at 6 p.m. at the Senior Center in Bridgewater. Community Paradigm, which is the company we've hired to help us with that search, will lead the discussion, give a brief update on the timeline, the landscape of hiring a town manager, and then hear from all of you and take questions and hopefully be able to provide some answers there. So looking forward to folks tomorrow evening, 6 p.m. at the Bridgewater Senior Center. Just a reminder of that. And then we will be meeting the following Thursday. We'll be going into executive session and reviewing the resumes for applicants. As of this morning, we received 15 applicants, and so we've hit our target number of 15 to 20, which was our expected, with the anticipation of still a few more to come in. The search company is working on next week's the conference. MMA conference. So they will be at the MMA conference and soliciting a few folks there as well too. So that'll wrap up midtime next week, and then as I mentioned, Thursday evening, the search group will go into executive session and begin the process to review resumes.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Any other comments? Mr. Lindy?
So we have one item for budget and finance, but we can't do it before the next meeting because we have the joint meeting with
School committee.
So I'm going to find out from my other two members when we can do maybe a Zoom meeting and just deal with that one item. I think it's cleared finance, so I think. No, hasn't, so they have to deal with it too, but we just have to move it because it's the only item. We'll be in touch.
Ms. McGrath?
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Do they need help setting up at the senior center for the meeting? Do we go early and help set up? No?
You're welcome to. I'm planning to get there a little bit early to help and see if
Okay.
we're going to work with them tomorrow morning on the setup and what they need over there.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
And finally, just for me, we had a meeting of the Community Economic Development Committee to just review what's coming up in just a moment, legislation for action regarding the right of first refusal for the town for Oldfield Estates, which the subcommittee voted 3-0 to approve. That was the only thing on our docket for that particular meeting. And then just this morning, we had a Downtown Revitalization Ad Hoc Committee meeting with Mr. Rulli, just reviewing some updates to Vision of Reality. I believe it was zoomed in. We had some Zoom attendees, so I believe it was recorded, so that video should be up shortly on YouTube, and notes will be coming by the next meeting for people if they're looking for committee meeting notes on that. I think that's all we have for committee reports. We'll move on to legislation for action. First one being Order OFY 25-034, right of first refusal for Oldfield Estates, NKA Oldfield Preserve. This was brought forth by Councilor Chase. And this was basically just for the town of Bridgewater had a right of first refusal regarding common open space that the Preserve Homeowner Association wishes to convey to a wildland trust. So this order basically waives the town of Bridgewater right of first refusal in this particular item. As I mentioned, the CEDC subcommittee voted 3-0 to approve, and I believe we are, it's been advertised and we are ready to act on it this evening. Do I hear a motion to approve? Ms. Striggle, second.
Second.
By Mr. Chase. Any discussion on the item? Seeing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next up, we have Order OFY 25-035, vote to authorize Acting Town Manager Blythe Robinson to sign on behalf of the town of Bridgewater. This goes again, as we described at our last meeting, to the Murphy's Landing 40B project on Plymouth Street. This basically, again, is necessary for the owners of this project, which has already been built and developed, to move forward with actions with the property. It was not referred to committee. We kept this at a council level, and 14 days has elapsed, so we may be able to take this up this evening. So do I have a motion for approval and second for discussion, if there's any discussion?
Discussion, Mr.
Well,
President?
motion first for approval, Ms. Striggles, and second for discussion, Ms. Ellenberg. All right, Ms. Ellenberg, you got a question?
Yes. My impression from talking to many, many residents is that people are concerned with the water issue. And I'm going to be offering an amendment, so I'm discussing what the amendment, the reason for it. And if they want the water dealt with first before more building goes in, I understand this one is already in the pipeline.
It's already been built, Ms. Ellenberg.
However, yes, my motion is to insert the word only into the article so that Blythe Robinson will have the authority to sign for this particular agreement, but we don't need a blanket authorization all the way down the line. So I make a motion to add the word only between the words for and the following project, for only the following project, Murphy's Landing.
I'll defer to Mr. Rollins on this. I mean, this is basically just specifying direction only to this particular project, correct, as written?
Yes.
So adding only really is moot?
It's up to you guys, but I think this only authorizes the town manager to sign for the project that's specified in the order.
Right.
Because it basically specifically says that the town council assembled vote to authorize acting town manager Blythe Robinson to execute on behalf of the town the local initiative program regulatory agreement for the following project and
Only
list
one
the
project.
project. There can only be one regulatory agreement for that particular project. They don't do multiple agreements, and this agreement will get recorded at the Registry of Deeds. So I'll leave it up to you.
Yeah.
I think either way, it is only for this project regardless.
So again, Ms. Ellenberg, I don't think this applies to any other project. It's only for this project, without stating specifically only. But if someone wants to second your motion, we'll take it up for further discussion. Does anyone want to second her motion?
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay. Any further? Do you have any further
I don't,
comments on
I'm
it?
just,
Any other councilor comments on it? I would just state that I don't think we need to put the word only in there. I think it's basically directs it for just one project as it's written.
For discussion, Mr. President?
But please continue.
Yes. I think that it should be noted in the minutes tonight that it is for this project only, as specified in here, and let the minutes reflect that. That's all.
Okay. So are you withdrawing your motion to add only?
I'll withdraw my motion.
All right, thank you.
I'll withdraw the second.
All right, very good. So back to the order at hand. We had a motion for approval and a second. Any further discussion on the order? Ms. McGrath.
Thank you. I just have one question. I'm just curious, since we're only hosting this and we have nothing to do with it except they're building it in our town. So what happens when the developer's done and down the road, he doesn't keep the building up? Is it now our responsibility?
These are not about keeping the building up. So essentially what happens is the town approves the comprehensive permit. Part of that process, in particular when it involves a local initiative program like this, is that the developer has to do this regulatory agreement so that both the town and a monitoring agent, who's usually the state, can actually oversee the project and ensure that they're following the guidelines that were set for them by the town about income verification, resale of the properties, those kinds of things. The care of the building itself doesn't fall under the regulatory agreement at all. It has nothing to do with the regulatory agreement. That could be down the road a Board of Health issue or something like that, but that's the same for any person that buys a premises and doesn't take care of it, right? There's some individual rights you have.
But are we responsible to take care of it because there's no
No.
So if he, 5 years down the road, he's not keeping it up, the state will go after him and we're not responsible for that?
It's going to be privately owned.
Yeah, it's going to be privately owned. So,
Okay.
so I'm assuming he may have a mortgage on it. There may be something that he may get foreclosed if that's the case. It's hard. It would be impossible to know.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McGrath. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none. All those in favor of the order, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Finally, under this category, we have Resolution R FY 25-005, a resolution to file and accept grants with and from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs for the Parkland Acquisitions and Renovations for Communities Program for improvements to Summer Street Park. Again, we did not refer this to a committee. We kept this at a council level, and 14 days has elapsed. So now we can finally consider this this evening. Again, this relates to monies for the Summer Street Park project. And if Councilor Robinson has any further things to add regarding this?
Two things. One, I received some more clarification on this since we talked last. First is that the state, you've already done this when we received the $500,000 grant, but the state wanted it redone to reflect all the money being spent, so it's not just the money that the town is receiving in that grant, it's also the money that the town spent through its CPC funds to take the property, which is why you see a higher amount. So that's one thing. Second thing is that I think this language came from the state, and they don't necessarily, didn't necessarily recognize that the position I have is as town manager, not city manager. So I would recommend that in the now therefore section, we change those to town manager or acting town manager, whatever is your pleasure, just so it's more accurately reflects Bridgewater.
Gotcha. Thank you. So with that, I'll ask for a motion to change city manager to town manager.
So moved.
And second? Okay. And that's in line 1 and line 2 of now therefore it be it. So we'll change those two to town.
Dr.
And
Perry,
city in the line with the.
Yeah, one of the
dollar
bottom
amount.
lines. Now therefore be it,
Last
number
whereas.
1, that the town manager instead of city manager at the bottom, and then in number 2, the same thing. So we had a motion and a second. Any further?
Question.
Go
Just a
ahead, Mr.
question.
Lindy, sure.
Just a question, does the council actually accept grants on behalf of the town?
And you already did.
Okay.
So it's just, again, the number is a combined number.
Did you also hear the town manager had mentioned in the first whereas clause, it says the city has appropriated? That should also say the town has appropriated.
I see that, whereas, yeah.
Yeah, so it's, I would say, just simply amend.
Anywhere there's city
Anywhere
that
where it
appears
says
in
city,
it, we'll
say
change that to
town.
town.
Right.
Okay. So modify that amendment. So again, motion to change all listed cities to towns. I have a motion for that. And second by Mr. Chase. Any further discussion? So we're voting on the amendment. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. On the item itself, on the resolution, we had, do I have a motion to approve? And second by Mr. Chase. Any further discussion on the resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, that wraps up for legislation for action. We do not have any old business this evening, but we have a couple items of new business. First one being Ordinance DFY 25-015, ordinance establishing the process for filling a vacant town councilor role. This was brought forward by Councilor Murphy, so I'll actually turn it over to Councilor Murphy to introduce this to us.
Yeah, as promised, I think this ordinance serves to clarify that gray area that we were in with Councilor Robinson's resignation from the council. And so this process now includes a detailed process of the town council voting to fill the seat, notice of vacancy, a process for applications and a certain period in which that'll take place, an interview process that'll take part at a council meeting that also includes public input, which I know is important to the residents. It includes a ranked choice voting process of those that apply and interview, and then also refers to a special election should it need to be. And so just hoping to clarify that process moving forward, and not hoping to offend Council already in that process as well, too.
All right, Mr. Ray. So this obviously is looking to be referred to rules and procedures, so I'll ask for a motion to send to rules and procedure, and we can have a second for discussion.
moved.
Mr. Lindy, second by Ms. Strigels for discussion. Does anyone have any discussion items on it at this point? Ms. McGrath.
Thank you. I just have a couple. The thing, I think it's too complicated because you have under interviews, we have an interview process where we don't do that with us. As candidates, you know, we talk about ourselves and we have a couple questions asked if you want to. I think we should do more than that, than putting more pressure on them. I really liked how they came up and spoke. And it says followed by a brief interview. And I'm not sure, how that would be. So I'm not crazy about that. And the other part where it says interview shall be conducted, it says responds to questions. I don't know who asks those questions, is it town council or but I really thought the other one worked really well, that we all got to listen. I thought the only problem we had with that process was the voting. I thought that's what you thought was very confusing, which I did too, because we didn't get to hear them all, we didn't get to vote on all of them. So really, to me, it was just the voting. And I just want one question about the voting, because I'm confused. So I just want you to clarify for me. On number 3, it says, the fewest first choice votes is eliminated and their votes are redistributed to the next ring. So if I get the fewest, then it's going to go to the next person?
No, I think my intention there was that if you get the fewest votes, it would automatically eliminate you and then leave the remainders to be revoted on.
Because it says their votes are redistributed to the next ring.
Correct. So the remaining folks would then be revoted on again.
Okay, so it doesn't carry over.
Correct.
That's anything.
Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate you doing all the work. I looked at the old one, and I just think if we just made amendment to the old one for the voting, I thought that was the most confusing.
Yeah,
thing, how we ranked everyone.
I just want to speak to your interview process because I agree that maybe the wording interview process isn't catching what the intent was, but I did include in the language that I thought it was important, as did you, I think, just state that they have a 3-minute opportunity to give a presentation and speak, because I don't think that was clearly outlined. And so in the future, if we were to run a process like that, how would we hear from that person? I think that was my intention. And the interview portion of that was, my intention was to be able to ask questions on that presentation if we so choose. I think, well, there's an opportunity for folks to campaign in a normal election. This kind of serves that purpose in a very short amount of time. That was my intention.
So the town council would be asking the questions to the...
Yes, only the town council members, yes.
And you think it's important that they do a resume and all that, even though the candidates don't have to do that?
I'm sorry? What do you mean by?
You have them, the candidates have to have a resume and all that, but when you run, you don't have to put a resume or anything in it. You just, speak about who you are and why you're running and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think...
It just seems really formal, and I know where you work in the college, this is probably what you usually do.
Yeah, I think my intention again with that was this seems more of almost an appointment process, and we do that for all other appointments where we ask for resumes from folks just so we have their general background. Again, I think, while we have time to follow folks while they campaign in a normal election, this is a very short amount of time that we're trying to learn the most about those candidates. And so any information that we could provide, if it's a resume that we could put in the agenda for folks to read in the public and understand who that person is, I also think that's valuable to them as well, too.
Okay, I agree with that, now that you clarified it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Liddy, then Mr. Eagles.
So, Paul, I appreciate you doing this. I think the resume is important because we asked for that for the boards and commissions recently, to add that to our packet so everybody could view it. I think this is a good start. I think we needed to have something, and I think it's understandable, so I'm good with it.
Thank you, Mr. Liddy. And Mr. Eagles.
Thank you. I think maybe if we change interview process to candidate forum, putting that type of tonality around it, because that's basically what it was, and that wasn't the flawed process, it was the voting. So maybe that's just changing the wording, but the messaging is still good. But I would have loved to have been able to ask a question.
Any other questions? Mr. Loretti.
I have a question about the special election option. So this would be enacted if it's within the last 6 months of somebody's term. So this process would presumably take a month, maybe 2 months to get through. I guess looking like about a month. So if this fails, then there's going to be another 90 days to have a special election. So by the time that's all said and done, won't it be like a 30 to 60 day term? So shouldn't we just make sure that somebody gets appointed through this process?
I can only speak, I think that was sort of the fail-safe that was already in the charter language that I kind of redistributed in here. I will say that I think the opportunity for the town council to vote on whether to fill the seat is important in the beginning, especially if it's I think the intention is that it was an at-large seat that we could vote to fill. I think a precinct personally should be filled, and so that's why I think I addressed the at-large piece. But to your point, I think that maybe gives another option there, an out.
And just an aside, so there's a first 18-month situation and in the last 6 months, so this is addressing that window in between. But if we have a laborious process, that takes, more time and runs us into that last 6-month situation, I can understand what you're saying. But this is basically what this is trying to address, because there is a procedure for if someone leaves within their first 18 months of office or in the last 6 months. That's outlined in the charter.
Sorry,
And
I
that
thought
goes
this
back
was-
to
I thought
the
this
prior
was-
election results.
I thought this was for the last 6 months portion.
No, this is basically the window that's in between the first 18 months and the last 6 months, because there is procedure already outlined for those terms when it goes back to the prior vote of that seat. And if someone who came in second but has at least 30% of the vote, they would be eligible to take that seat if that counselor leaves within the first 18 months or within the last 6 months of their.
Would that not be a charter amendment? Because,
No, that's outlined in the charter as it is.
okay, because I did have a question because I was reviewing the charter, and we have 3-year terms, and there's a process for the first 18
Right.
and then the last 6. So this
Correct.
is going to be filling in the gap.
This fills in the gap.
Oh,
This
I
is
didn't
what we
notice that
ran
language.
into for Council Robinson.
That's why they can do it as an ordinance, because the criteria for how it's specifically filled within that gap isn't articulated in the charter. If it were like at the first 18 months or the last 6 months, then you're right, it would have to be an amendment to the charter. But because it's not in there, you're filling the gap with the process to fill that criteria of like the last section, which is the gap, for lack of a better term, for those time periods.
Thank you, Attorney Rollins. Any other questions or comments from councilors? I'll just add a couple things, and just looking at things I believe you had listed as a Section 2EC. I think there should be Section 2.5C, as I've got the actual copy of the charter thing here, and it's under Section 2-5, Section C. So just, something to edit there. Secondarily, I've had some people reach out talking to me about the shall versus may language, where, again, this debate seems to go on, where shall is more of a directive to do something, and may gives you an option to take action or not. If you have it written down under Section 3, under Town Council vote, the Town Council will vote as to whether or not it tends to filling the vacancy. I think that debate still goes on, whether we should or have the option to vote on taking action on it or not, even though we did that with Mr. Loretti. In further analysis, I'm seem more convinced now that it is a directive to the Town Council to do so by using the word shall. It's in the charter. So I just might question that particular line in Section 3, because I do think the Town Council will have to make that decision to go forward and fill that seat. That's what's directed by the charter. It's not listed as may. It's under that Section C, it says the vacancy shall be filled by the remaining members of the Town Council. So I think that's going to be a directive for us to do it no matter what. So I'm just wondering if that line needs to be struck.
So we've had that debate for literally probably 11 years.
I know, Attorney Rollins.
And your precedent has always been that you all have the authority to take the vote. Yeah. And that was based off of, I think it got caught up in translation. It's not an issue of the word shall. What it says is, if you read the plain language of the charter, it says the vacancy shall be filled by the remaining members of the Town Council. It was always interpreted that language was saying to you all, you are the body that fills that vacancy, not you're the body that has to fill that vacancy. So it's a semantics argument. It is vague.
Right.
And so the argument that has always been had is an argument about the word shall. That isn't how it was ever interpreted.
Yeah.
So the interpretation, and it was my predecessor, to be honest with you, that made the interpretation initially when we went through all this, was that language was saying that if we fall within this window, the council is the body that fills that vacancy, not that the council has to fill that vacancy.
So
right?
just saying that the 8 remaining members of the council will continue to act as such if they.
No,
choose to
what it was interpreted to say back then, and what the precedent has always been, is that that language, the plain meaning of that language is not that you have to fill the vacancy, but that if you fall within this time period, you're the body, the only body that can fill that vacancy, right? And so it's a distinction, it's semantics, it's vague at best, right? You could interpret it 50 ways probably, right? But so you know historically that's how it was interpreted. So the debate of the word shall has nothing actually to do with what we're talking about. It's an issue of what is the semantics within there. People got hung up on the word shall because that's an easy analysis, but that's not actually the analysis here. The analysis is it that you must appoint someone, or is it that you're the only body able to do something about it? So it's a different distinction, right?
Right.
So we didn't clarify it the last time. You guys had to do interviews and stuff, and I think this has been an issue for years.
Yes.
If I had it my way, I would be telling you should amend the charter to make it much more clear within this time period, right? I think that would solve a lot of problems. But I do think it important, if it continues to get brought up, for you to understand kind of the historical context of how that evolved to where it was, and that it wasn't an interpretation of must, shall, may, any of that. The word shall happen to be within the context. It's a semantic argument about how you read that plain language. I know it's confusing, but
no,
so
I
you understand.
Like you say, it's semantics. So are you saying we're safe for keeping the line that does state that the council shall make that choice of filling the position?
That's how it was originally interpreted.
Yeah.
When this section was first interpreted, it was pretty quick after the charter was adopted.
Yeah.
They interpreted it that way. And so then the precedent that was set thereafter, right, through your action, was that that's how it's always been interpreted, right? Again, if it's unclear or vague, there's arguments to be made, and I think there are arguments to be made. But I think your precedent has always been to do it that way and to interpret the plain meaning of how it reads to be that what this is saying is that the remaining members of the town council are the body that pick if this goes forward or not that the remaining members of the town council have to pick somebody. And part of that was there's also some common sense to that, because if you don't find someone, right, you now have a directive that you can't fulfill, right? So like there is a lot of arguments to be made on this, but I think the easiest way to do it is to follow the precedent, which is what we did. And I think this follows the precedent, and that's why it exists the way it's written.
Thank you,
honestly.
Ms. Reynolds.
Sure.
Mr. Chase.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you, please, to our town council. So would it be appropriate in the context of the ordinance that's before us now to consider some clarification language simply to indicate that it is a permissive action, given our understanding of the charter and the precedent that we have followed for quite some time?
Exactly. So all you're doing by way of ordinance is clarifying that issue, number one, which has always been the precedent anyway. But you're clarifying that issue by way of ordinance without having to change, right, the charter. And then you're also giving yourself protocol to follow to fulfill that, right? And that's what I think. And Mr. Murphy, correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's the intention of the ordinance. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. And then just finally for me, I just hope through rules and procedures. I'm not sure if we can clear up the language or expound upon it all, just the process regarding ranked choice voting process. I think again it's a little vague for me, and I don't know if we can get a little bit more detail of that. But again, it's a good basis, it's a great start, and I think necessary to help us go forward as a council when this happens again. So I appreciate Mr. Murphy's efforts in putting this together. So, that being said, any further questions or comments? We had a motion and a second to send to Rules and Procedures. All those in favor of sending Rules and Procedures, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And then secondarily, we have Order OFY 25-036, laying out and accepting a private way, Firefly Lane. Let's see. This was submitted by Councilor Chase on behalf of the petitioner. So, Councilor Chase, if you'd like to introduce this to us.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And it's simply a matter of laying out and accepting this private way, which by virtue of the documentation that's been furnished to the council, we can see is entirely in accord with our zoning, and it's certainly, I think, advisable that the owners of properties on Firefly Lane are seeking town ownership of their right-of-way, and the recommendation is that we grant them that.
All right. So I need, number one, a voice vote for an intent to take the way, and then a second vote to refer to planning. Does that have to be a joint meeting with CEDC or just planning only?
Just planning.
Just planning only, okay. So I will look for a motion to, for an intent to take the way, and then
So
a
moved.
second, and Ms.
Second.
Strigel, second by Ms. McGrath. Any further discussion on it? So that I can take a voice vote on. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you. And then secondarily, a motion to refer to the planning board.
So moved.
Mr. Lindy,
Second.
second by Mr. Chase. Any further discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor of sending the planning board, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. So that wraps up our new business for this evening and our business in general. So I will then move on to citizen comments for our steady three citizens that have stuck here all night. Does anyone like to come up and speak under citizens' comments? Please come on up. And again, as always, state your name and address for the record and keep it to 3 minutes or less.
Hi, Janet Hansen, 665 Pleasant Street. I couldn't quite hear what you said about the voting, so hopefully you can correct me if I'm wrong. It's not a done deal on the voting times, is it? Did I miss something? I mean, you can at least answer that question. Is it been a decided vote for the voting or no? Because if it hasn't, then I can talk. It hasn't, okay. I still feel that, I know they say that it's to save money and everything, but I still feel that we should still just stick with on Saturdays, 8 to 8 like they always do. Everybody knows it is like that. If you start changing it from 10 to 3 and then someday 10 to 8, there are still people that it would be better for them if they can just do it in the morning, get it over with. If you make it 10 to 3, my understanding was that if it's uncontested and there's nothing else, then they end at 3. Well, how are you going to let the residents know, well, this time it was 10 to 8 and now it's 10 to 3. You're going to have to educate people so you don't have somebody showing up at 4 wondering what happened. So that's a concern I have. I just feel that it should just stick 8 to 8. The only other thing, people want the roads repaved. There are a lot of roads that need to be repaired, no question. It just seems like the same roads are always the same ones being repaved all the time, and I don't get it, why that always happens. But I would like to see, I know you can't do it now, but when the weather comes, I would like to see that these roads get repainted, not just some, but I have a hard time driving at night because there's no lines. So all the roads need to be repainted and the crosswalks need to be done, not just in the center of town. Everywhere there's a crosswalk. But we really need all the streets that originally had a line, have a line, or if they don't have a line, put a line in the middle. It's very hard for people that can't see at night very well, and it's raining, to not have that distinct line. So besides the repaving, we need to repaint. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. And anybody else like to come up and speak? All right. Seeing none, thank you. Appreciate that. We will now move on to council comments. And I will start off with Mr. Loretti to my right.
None at this time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Loretti. Ms. Ellenberg.
Yes, I would just like to request our town manager again to reiterate what Mr. Murphy said, that we get an update on the water situation. My understanding is that Bridgewater State University is on our town water. Is that correct? And so that I think that Bridgewater should be asking the state for more money for our water treatment plants because the state is taking from Bridgewater. So I wanted to express that point of view to you, and I hope you would undertake that on behalf of the citizens because the water issue is primary in town. Secondly, Ms. Hanson was talking about the elections, and I had spoken to the town clerk earlier about this, and she said that we would save $2,500 and that most people do mail-in anyways. However, on reconsideration, I feel that our election time should stay 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., and I do think that $2,500 or that range is inconsequential in the light of the millions in our town budget. So, anyway, thank you for your report so far, Ms. Robinson. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ellenberg. Mr. Murphy.
Just 2 quick points for me. Again, can't remind folks enough. Tomorrow evening, community forum at the Senior Center in Bridgewater, 6 p.m. Hopefully folks have a chance to come out and make that. If you cannot attend, I would ask that you reach out to myself. Happy to have a phone call, meet in person, whatever can help with that. And going off that point, I'm going to host, given everything, I feel like it's a hot time within the town. Budget season, folks are asking about paving. Water is always a number one concern. Downtown revitalization. I'm going to host an office hour next Wednesday evening here at the council chambers at 6 p.m. for folks to come and talk whatever they need to talk. Their upcoming school presentation is also coming up in 2 weeks, and I know that's an important topic to a lot of parents especially. So next Wednesday evening at the 29th here in the council chambers at 6 p.m. I'll meet with folks if anybody wants to stop by and have a conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Mr. Lindy.
Continuing on the theme of boards and commissions that were brought up by 2 of my colleagues, I know Mary was out there this summer trying to get people to volunteer. I know Councilor Ellenberg brought it up, I believe, at the last meeting. I happened to get here a little bit early, and Janet Hanson was in the hallway with a gentleman from the Historic District Commission, or Historical Commission, and I saw a meeting posted, and I had it in my calendar. I didn't make it for the 6 o'clock meeting. I got here about 6:30, and no one else was at that meeting. I asked him, how many members are on your committee? He said 3. I said, how many members are allowed? He thinks it's either a 5-member committee or a 7-member committee. So I'll just put out the call. I told him I would do it. If people are looking for something to serve with, there are plenty of vacancies on plenty of boards, specifically that one, and sometimes the business can't get done. I heard the Cultural Council has issues right now where they can't award grants because they don't have enough members. So just putting out the word for citizen volunteers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lindy. Mr. Jace.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to reiterate that the meeting tomorrow evening at the Senior Center with respect to downtown revitalization efforts is really something of paramount concern. I would urge all citizens who have an interest or concern with respect to those matters. Certainly tomorrow would be a great opportunity to voice concerns and to hear the comments from fellow citizens and town officials. That's all I have.
I forgot one thing. I'm sorry.
All right, Mr. Lindy.
Just wanted to clarify that voting hours as they currently stand are 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., not 8 to 8.
Right. No, I was going to make that comment too, but thank you. Ms. Driggles, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to echo my fellow councilors' sentiments about attending tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. We wanted to ensure that you had a moment to voice your opinions and have a public forum. So this is an amazing opportunity to not only connect with Community Paradigm, but to allow your pros and cons about the process to potentially be heard through the bodies and the people that will be very influential in making the decision. I did just want to end my comments with the fact that yesterday was Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and in light of that, I did want to share something that I stare at every day in my office. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about the things that matter. And I always will promise the people of Bridgewater that I will never be silent about the things that matter to me and the things that matter to my district. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Triggles. Ms. McGrath?
I don't have anything. Thank you.
Nothing for Ms. McGrath. All right. So again, just to reiterate what the other counselor said with the meeting tomorrow night. This is something that obviously we heard quite regularly from our public at our meetings here, that they wanted their voices to be heard. So this is your opportunity to let your voice be heard. So please come on out to that meeting tomorrow night at 6. And let Community Paradigm hear your voice and what you're looking for in a new town manager. So this is the time, people. So snow's cleared. You should have no problem getting there. It's at the Senior Center. Don't forget. Secondarily, I just also want to mention earlier today we had a pretty exciting meeting at BSU. We had the governor and vice governor here looking at the new cyber program that BSU has put forth, and obviously very impressive in and of itself. But the governor was revealing her new $8 billion infrastructure plan, not only for improving the state's infrastructure, but for that of universities and colleges of state colleges and universities. So I did grab her ear for a couple of minutes, introduce myself, and just let her be known that we as a town with a regional school system are struggling financially. We're looking forward to hopefully getting some improved funding for our regional school system. She agreed that the process for determining the funding for regional schools is flawed. She said the state did have more money for this upcoming fiscal year, so she will certainly see what she can do. And I said that's all I ask, but I did want to make it known that I did put that into the governor's ear directly, so we'll see what becomes of that. So with that, I'll ask for a motion for adjournment. And second? Second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you for coming, everyone.